Hello and welcome to Vibration Shift. So we're going to talk a little bit, because we're doing energetic clearings, and why we start on mom, dad, why we start on our parents. And I'm going to give you a little analogy of like why we start there, because it's super important. We want to start, and it might not be the most powerful, if that makes sense, the most critical place to start, but it is the most important place to start, right? So I want to give you an analogy of like, think of like your yard. Like say you have a house. If you have a house, let's imagine we've got this house, got this beautiful house, right? And we've got this awesome lawn, right? But it's full of trash. Like we've got broken cars in there. We've got, lawn mowers. We've got the grasses like, up to our waist. There's toys. There's this trash everywhere, right? There's trash all throughout the lawn, kind of covering the lawn. And I want you to think of that. Like that would be kind of like these energetic chains that you have to your parents, right? So when you're coming into your house, you're going to pass through your lawn. You're going to see all the trash. You look out your window, you're going to see all the trash. It's a constant reminder of this trash where you're at. And your house might be really nice and fancy, right? Your internal house nice and fancy. But every time you come to it, you're going to come to all this trash, right? And anytime you're looking out, you're going to see all this trash, right? And so I want you to think of like that's kind of like something that's going to really affect you on a consistent, ongoing basis. And it's always going to kind of frame things. Your friends come over, they're going to see all the trash. You invite people, for business, they're going to see all the trash. So I want to kind of think of it like that's like you're up front, in your face, there's the trash. And that's kind of working with mom and dad, not mom and dad are trash or anything like that, but just an analogy of like in this house, in the yard, you got to think of like that stuff that's there is your trash. Because when you incarnated in this body, it came through, there's some, genetic programming and conditions that mom and dad, you're going to get passed down to, but also just environment with them. So all their conditioning and training is what you're going to get conditioned and training in this current incarnation. Now you have other incarnations. You could have generational stuff passed down. You could have curses from previous lifetime that are more powerful and more of effect. But you want to think of those kind of like, almost like there's like toxic waste underneath your lawn. There might be, there might not, right? But you won't know what's underneath your lawn because all the trash that's up, all the trash that you're currently dealing with, you're not necessarily going to see that trash underneath your lawn. So that's why we want to deal with kind of like your mom, dad, initial stuff. Not to mention in this carnation, you come in, you're learning all those core things that you're going to function from mom and dad. So it's such a perfect place to start because it's also your biggest realizations. Like say you clear out all the trash in your lawn, right? And it's all clean, you got it nice and mowed. You might start seeing some brown patches or a sinkhole, and that would be an example of like something from a previous lifetime or some generational stuff or some deep, deep curses or something. But you will never get to that if your yard was covered in trash everywhere. So that's why we start with mom and dad in that analogy, right? But what's happening is that when you come into a physical body, and you're a being of light, right? So you've got that, being of lightness, you're beaming your love, but you have to be taken care of by mom or dad or whoever your caregiver is, right? And they have to be stable and they have to be reliable and they have to pretty much take care of all your needs. And if that doesn't happen, it causes you to freak out. And that's where you kind of get this, like, that's where we start energetically chaining. We learn that from our parents in this carnation of like, that's how we energetically chain. Because once we've dropped the body, you still can have chaining to previous lifetimes, but it's different. It's not like the relearning that you got in this lifetime of like your safety is corely connected to that, right? It's really connected because mom and dad need to take care of you or you don't make it, right? So that's where your body's like, hey, I have to get taken care of. Being a light's like, hey, I don't want to do it that way. That way feels kind of crummy, right? And we're kind of resolving that. But that's why we start with mom and dad first, to really get that kind of behavior of like, this is where we learned it in this incarnation. It got deeply connected to our safety. And then we play it out after that. Like once we've built that connection, we've dialed that in to like do that, not in a positive way, but we did this energetic, chaining, so to speak. I know that energetic chain is like just a global word that we use for the negative ways in which we connect with people versus like a love. and loving and being a light. But we learned that like, hey, maybe we're supposed to do the energetic chain way, right? We learned that from mom and dad. But once we learn from mom and dad, then we start doing it with all the people after that, right? And those could be more affecting our current life. But the problem is we start clearing current life stuff. First of all, when we clear mom and dad, it's probably going to clear out current life stuff because we kind of sweep it up through because we got the core of like, hey, this is where I fundamentally decided to do it this way. Most likely, when you clear it, you're going to sweep it up to current life. So you'll see changes in your current life radically. But the thing is, if you just did current life, you just recreate it because your foundation is saying, hey, we're supposed to energetically chain. Okay, I won't do it with this one person, but they're going to start being so out of congruence with what your core program is, you'll probably get rid of them and find someone else to then energetically chain and redo the game again. So it wouldn't even serve you to like, hey, I'm going to clear up all this communication with this one person, and then I'll get rid of them because they don't match my core level program, and go find someone else and do all the energetic chain stuff again. That's why it doesn't, it's not the most effective thing to clear with your current people. We want to get the foundation taken care of to where we just start remembering that, hey, we don't need to do this energetic chaining thing, and then everything starts improving from there. Because now that we've got an agency, now that we can take care of ourselves, we can do that. When we were a baby and a child, we didn't necessarily have that freedom because we had to get taken care of and we had to match the environment that we came into. And if we were a big dissonance between that and we're like just being a light, the people that were taking care of us that couldn't necessarily handle that being a light would have been like pulled away or like, ooh, we energetically chain, you're not interested in doing that. That might not work, which in your current life, that's okay if people maybe start distancing themselves from you, because there's others that will come in and you'll have a very rich and amazing life. But as a baby, as a child, you can't have the people that are taking care of you distance from you. That doesn't work. That's where the body dies. And the body's like, no, do the chaining. So just because for this incarnation, because that's so strong, that's why we start at mom and dad, right? So kind of like our lawn, the analogy, we're clearing out the lawn, and then we could see if there is something deeper, That could be, it was just, in this incarnation, the energetic chaining, we break it. We'll most likely go at least one generation back, we will, with grandparents, because biologically, you were in grandma while mom was too. So you're biologically connected, not to mention you're gonna be energetically connected. I mean, that's such a close chain, but getting mom and dad, that can be enough to where we just wake up and we're like, hey, wait a second. Yeah, I've reconnected with my being a light enough. I don't have anything further and deeper down that's really gonna hold me, and I'm ready to let that go. So cool, I'm back to being a light. Let's stop doing the energetic chains. And then it gets really easy, because once we clear mom, dad, and then also grandparents if needed, but we'll probably do it because it's just a really good thing to do. Then clearing people is so much easier, because we kind of get really meticulous. It's like first we start with safe to be safe, safe to feel safe. We're going really meticulous because this is deep foundational stuff. But once you start clearing that, especially with mom, dad, grandparents, now with other people, it's almost, you can just say energetic chains and it gets them all. You don't have to go through each one of the ones that you did with mom and dad. You can just do energetic chains and it's going to clear them all, because the foundation has been cleared out. And now your being a lightness is like, wait a second, that's not critical for me. I don't have to worry about that. I'll get all of them. I can clear them all out because the foundation that's holding them in place has now been cleared. There's nothing for them to kind of latch onto. There's not a lot of weight in your body. Pretty much your unconscious can go through them really fast. So that's also the big leverage thing, is that now in your current life, like all the people that are currently in your life that you might be energetically chained to, you don't have to sit there meticulously go through each different way in which you're chained. You can just be like, hey, all the chains, let's clear them. So that's another big benefit of why we start with mom and dad. And then we go to grandparents, because grandparents can be a heavier chain, if that makes sense. Because because you're biologically there, so you're picking it up directly. Not to mention, they're kind of like foundationally we're giving what mom and dad had and then change it to you. But definitely the entry point is mom and dad, because even if the grandparents one are more powerful, they're still going to be secondary. Like the analogy, you got to clean the lawn, and then you might see a sinkhole or some toxic waste, i.e. that was the grandparents' chains. Not that they are toxic waste, they are a sinkhole, just the chaining, just that habit of like, how do we interact in a non-being of light way, that's going to be a detriment to us. And it's a detriment to them too, because you're chained to them, they're chained to you. When they pass along, you kind of redo the chain with somebody that's incarnated here, that's like them. So you still got the chain, they're still imprisoned. Your grandparents, which may have passed on, their being obviously is free, and you're not going to be able to chain the being of light, but you'll chain an incarnated one that is similar, kind of like picks up the slack, so to speak, in a not a good way. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do that chaining with you, cool. Let's do that, let's play that game. But we're undoing that. But this hopefully gives you an idea as to why we start with mom and dad, why mom and dad is so important to do, because really once we get those, it makes it a lot easier to do the grandparents one. Even if the grandparents are stronger chain, it helps because it's this incarnation that we're most aware of, that once you get that kind of dialed in, it really helps to then, if it's mom, grandparents, if it's the deeper stuff, if it's a generational thing that's been passed down that you're kind of like your lineage has been fighting with, getting it clear here in this carnation helps you go after that too. So that's another reason why we work on mom and dad first, and then also just set you up that once you get that foundation right, once you get that soil right, then clearing other people is just super fast, super quick, and super easy, and takes like very, very little time. So hopefully that helps. Why we do mom and dad energetic chains first. And until we talk again, have a blessed day or a blessed night.